Ever get that feeling? Like history is just something in a textbook.
Yeah, names and dates, not really something that, comes to life.
Right. But what if we could actually feel history? Like, really step back in time?
A time machine would be nice.
Well, get ready, because today we're going to 17th century Spain, to a village called, are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Zugarramurdi.
Zugarramurdi. Okay, I'm intrigued. What happened there?
This place is all about witchcraft, accusations, fear, the kind of stuff that still gives you chills.
I'm in. So where do we even begin?
You sent me a ton of material on this. Articles, some videos, even stuff in Spanish.
See, some fascinating primary sources.
My Spanish is a little rusty, I'll be honest. But luckily, I have you to help me translate, to help me figure out what really went down in Zugarramurdi back in 1610. Ready to dive in.
Let's do it. Zugarramurdi is definitely more than just a name on a map. It's a reminder that sometimes the past isn't as distant as we think.
Okay, I'm getting chills already. So paint us a picture. What was life like in Zugarramurdi back then?
Picture the Basque Country, 1600s, rural, isolated. A place where ancient folklore and Catholicism kind of got all mixed up.
So like belief in magic wasn't some crazy idea. It was just normal.
Pretty much. The fear of witchcraft was everywhere in Europe. This was the time of the Malleus Maleficarum.
The what now?
The Malleus Maleficarum. Basically, a witch hunting manual.
Wait, a manual? Like how-to instructions for accusing your neighbor of witchcraft? Seriously?
You're not wrong. Published in the late 1400s, it was supposed to reveal the secrets of witches. How to identify them, how to punish them. Brutal stuff.
So this book, written miles away, had a real impact on life in this little Spanish village.
Absolutely. It fueled the witch hunts all over Europe, created this atmosphere where anyone who was different or maybe someone you just didn't like could be accused. And that brings us right to Zugarramurdi.
Okay, so we've got this isolated village, superstitions in the air, and now this witch hunting manual is making the rounds. What was the spark that set the whole thing off in Zugarramurdi?
A woman named Maria di Gimaldegi. She shows up in Zugarramurdi claiming to be a witch from France.
She admitted to witchcraft, just like that.
Yep. And not just any witch. Flying on broomsticks, meeting with other witches in the caves near the village. She even named names.
Wow. I can only imagine what people were thinking. But hold on, if she was a witch in France, what was she doing in Zugarramurdi? Seeking asylum.
That's the thing. A lot of people fleeing the French witch hunts ended up in border towns like Zugarramurdi. So Maria might have been looking for safety, but instead...
she brought the witch hunt with her. Tragic. It makes you think about how powerful stories are, how easily fear can spread.
Exactly. And Maria's story was just the beginning. Get ready, because it gets even wilder from here.
So Maria's story, that's like lighting a fuse, right? What happens next?
Things spiral pretty quickly. People start accusing each other left and right.
Just pointing fingers at random? Anyone could be a witch.
Not totally random, but definitely a wave of accusations. You have to remember, this is a small village. People had grudges, rivalries.
So accusing someone was a way to get back at them. Or maybe distract from your own secrets.
Exactly. Survival instincts kick in. And the sources you sent, they really bring this to life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's some names that really stuck with me, like Maria de Urengui and Graciana de Berenexia.
Right. Accused by their own neighbors, their families torn apart by suspicion. It's really tough to read about.
It's easy to judge, but who knows how we'd react in that situation. Surrounded by fear, everyone looking for someone to blame.
And that's where the Spanish Inquisition comes in.
Right, the Inquisition. We've all heard the name, but I'll admit, I don't really know how it all worked.
It gets a bad rap, and for good reason. But basically, it was the Catholic Church's way of keeping everyone in line.
In line meaning?
Meaning, if you were suspected of heresy going against the Church's teachings, you were in trouble.
And witchcraft was definitely heresy. So how does the Inquisition play into what's going on in Zugarramurdi?
1610, an inquisitor named Juan Valle Alvarado shows up in Zugarramurdi. He's there to investigate the witchcraft claims.
Oh, that's not good. I bet people were terrified. The Inquisition had a reputation, right?
For being thorough, Alvarado was known for his intense interrogation methods.
Meaning torture.
Let's just say, they weren't afraid to get confessions any way they could. And it wasn't just the interrogations themselves. The Inquisition was big on public spectacle. Which brings us to the auto da fe.
Right, the auto da fe. You mentioned this before. What was it exactly?
Imagine a massive public event, a combination of a trial and, well, an execution, all designed to scare people into obedience.
So the accused were put on display.
publicly humiliated, forced to confess their crimes, and then the sentences were handed down.
Which usually meant?
Could be imprisonment, sometimes exile, but often, yeah, it meant death.
Death as in?
Burned alive at the stake. It was meant to be a deterrent, a message from the church.
It's just, I can't even imagine. Knowing what we know now about false confessions, the power of fear.
It's a truly dark chapter. And unfortunately, for some of the accused in Zugarramurdi, the story ends in Logroño.
Logroño. That's where the auto de fe.
Right. November 1610, they held the auto de fe in Logroño.
And that's where some of the accused from Zugarramurdi.
6 of them were burned alive. 5 others died during the interrogations.
It's just awful. Knowing that it was all based on these unbelievable accusations.
It's hard to fathom, isn't it, how fear can make people do such things.
But you said something earlier about some of the accused refusing to confess, even when they knew.
Even facing death. They held on to their innocence. It's kind of amazing when you think about it.
Amazing, and more than a little bit heartbreaking, right? To die for a truth that no one believes.
It makes you wonder about the power of belief, doesn't it? Both the belief of the accusers and the unwavering belief of those who are accused.
And it makes that shift you mentioned even more interesting. How the Zugarramurdi trials, as awful as they were sort of, changed things, at least in Spain.
It's a strange kind of turning point, and it's tied to one of the inquisitors, Alonso de Salazar y Frias.
He was the one who started to question things?
He did. After Zugarramurdi, he starts saying that the confessions aren't reliable, that torture, fear, it makes people say anything to make it stop.
So he was like, wait a minute, this isn't right.
He was really skeptical of the whole thing, the stories of flying, shape-shifting. He said it was all nonsense. He even called out the Malleus Maleficarum, said it was dangerous, that it was making people imagine things.
Wow. So what happened? Did anyone listen to him? I mean, he was up against the entire Inquisition.
It wasn't immediate, but he did have an impact. Things started to change. Torture wasn't used as much.
That's something, I guess.
And they started to look for real evidence, which, let's be honest, there wasn't much when it came to witchcraft.
So Salazar Frias, he kind of planted a seed of doubt, maybe?
He was a voice of reason in a really dark time. And his story, it reminds us that one person can make a difference, even if it takes a while to see it.
It's like that old saying, one candle can light 1,000 others.
Exactly. And even though the witch hunts continued for a time, that one candle, it helped to illuminate the way forward.
And speaking of moving forward, what about Zugarramurdi? Today, I mean. You said those caves are a tourist attraction now.
They are. It's a little strange to think about, isn't it? People visiting the place.
Where all this darkness happened. But maybe it's not so strange. Maybe it's a way of remembering, of honoring the victims.
Zugarramurdi has a museum now, dedicated to the trials. They're telling the story, making sure it isn't forgotten.
Good. Because if we forget history, we're doomed to repeat it, right? And the story of Zugarramurdi, as strange and as awful as it is, it's a story we all need to hear.
I agree. It's a reminder that fear and ignorance can be very powerful, and that we need to be careful about who we trust, what we believe.
We always need to question, to think for ourselves. Because the world, it needs more people like Salazar y Frias, people who are willing to stand up and say, this isn't right.
Absolutely. And if we can all be a little braver, a little more willing to question, well, maybe we can keep those shadows at bay.
Well said. So, listener, that's Zugarramurdi, a small village in Spain, a place where history comes alive in the strangest and yes, the most tragic of ways. We hope you found this deep dive intriguing and, more importantly, that it sparks some reflection, even some healthy skepticism as you navigate your world. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep seeking the truth, and as always, thanks for listening.